Regarding the Discovery, Part 2. October 29, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. Yesterday, I rather painstakingly explained that, the United States has never been the United States, and is, instead, a municipal corporation set up in the inner city of London under the Government of Westminster, functioning under Roman civil law. The similar names deception has people rather distraught and making all sorts of absurd assumptions. This corporation is or was a federal subcontractor under the Constitution of the United States. See the name embedded. The United States, not the United States, not the United States, nor the United States. If you are going to read these documents and make any sense of them, you must pay strict attention to the style and the exact content of names, or you will never figure out what is going on or who is doing what, or the accountability for anything, either. Anywho, now that we know that, the United States is not the United States, and that, as it is a subcontractor, we don't really care how it organizes its business so long as it does its job and honors its obligations to us, the more interesting questions begin to surface. Yes, it is apparent that we are free and independent. It is also apparent that inhabitants, who remained loyal to King or the Pope, are not part of our populace. The error and glory of the peace settlement of the War of Independence is that it granted freedom to all born in this country, but left it up to individuals to declare themselves and choose their political status and affiliations. After the war, you could still voluntarily remain loyal to the King by adopting British territorial citizenship. You could likewise adopt municipal citizenship and remain loyal to the Pope. We did not force free people to renounce their foreign political affiliations if they didn't want to do so. By the same token, we retain our right to adopt and declare our freeborn birthright political status and our right to assemble our state assemblies of the free, sovereign and independent people, which we have done after having been falsely identified as both territorial U.S. citizens and municipal citizens. Our government was never designed to be in constant session. It was designed to meet as needed to decide important questions, and otherwise leave people alone. The record-keeping, peacekeeping and other routine functions and services of our government are supposed to be provided by American subcontractors called states of states, that are business organizations. But after the Civil War, British territorial subcontractors were allowed to sneak in and replace our American state-of-state organizations on an emergency basis. These foreign entities run by undeclared foreign agents have been running things ever since. To make matters worse, when British greed and incompetence resulted in the bankruptcy of this British territorial service provider, the then Pope saw his opportunity to do the same trick and set up municipal state-of-state organizations. Americans have unknowingly been paying for 2 layers of foreign government administration foisted off on them as their own government for 6 generations. The reconstruction of our government was never actually completed. This sleight of hand substitution, first by the Brits and second by the popes, happened instead. But they are each still obligated by their own affiliations to act as foreign citizenry owing allegiance to the British monarch or the Pope, respectively, and that means that these foreign citizens on our shores, acting as subcontractors and service providers for our government, do not have any constitutional guarantees. They are not parties to our Constitution, which contains the Bill of Rights and the titles of Nobility Amendment, the so-called missing Constitution, which has been languishing and unenforced, because our people neglected to declare and record their birthright political status and were hoodwinked into mistaking these foreign service providers as their own state-of-state organizations. The differences were deliberately made to be very subtle, and the deception hinged on using deceptively similar names and practices so as not to alarm the general populace. Our state-of-state doing business as the state of Wisconsin was replaced by the British territorial doppelganger doing business as the state of Wisconsin, and still later by the state of Wisconsin, a municipal government doppelganger. American babies are supposed to be recorded in family Bibles or upon the land jurisdiction recording offices, but the self-interested and well-hidden foreign interlopers started registering our births as if we were all British territorial U.S. citizens instead, and as if we had knowingly chosen and adopted that foreign political status or were natural heirs to it, without our knowledge or consent when we were just a few days old, and without giving any disclosure of this political identity theft to our parents, either. This then freed them of their obligations under the constitutions and deprived us of our constitutional guarantees by a deliberate process of fraudulent and deliberate misregistration and misrepresentation. This kind of activity, unlawfully converting the nationality of people, is an international and global capital crime, and both the British government and the Pope's municipal government have been engaged in it up to their hips since the 1920s. Nobody called them on it until now. The Americans have finally awakened to the clear and present danger of these criminal activities, and also the necessity of declaring and recording their correct political status, and last but not least, restoring their own government to full functionality, so that they are no longer depending upon any foreign service providers. Our actual properly declared state assemblies are now in session and will stay in session to handle our own affairs until these issues are resolved. Americans are urged to declare and record their birthright political status without delay, and also urged to join their state assembly. Contacts can be found at www.theamericanstatesassembly.net. Those assemblies that were enrolled as states of the Union prior to the Civil War have recently voted via roll call vote to acknowledge, accept, and formally enroll all of the states formed during and after the Civil War as states of the Union and full members of our unincorporated Federation of States doing business as the United States of America since 1776. The enrollment is retroactive to the date their statehood was approved by the U.S. Congress. This means that there is no longer any fetter of British territorial interest attaching to these states by any technical default, and no excuse for presuming that these states are enclaves of the United States municipal government, either. Alaska, for example, was bought in our names using our money, making it our possession but under British territorial rule under the Northwest Ordinance for many years. When it voted to become a state, the element of municipal government was added, but owing to the fact that our actual government was not in session, Alaska could not be enrolled officially as a state of the Union. Now it finally is a state in actual fact, having all the rights and prerogatives as the other states of the Union. No further presumption of territorial custodianship or municipal trust interest can be maintained. The assets and people of each state are thus set free of foreign indebtedness and legal presumption. This is, along with the opening of the actual state assemblies, causing a great deal of uproar. There were plans afoot made by our erstwhile subcontractors to claim that our government no longer exists and that they were entitled to give our assets to their creditors. This is not true, and that has caused a great deal of disgruntlement on the part of their creditors, especially mainland China, which has mistakenly thought that America was cheating them, when in fact we were victims of these charlatans ourselves. We are, in fact, their primary creditors. But there is no need to start a war or run around like decapitated chickens. We now know the sources of this criminality, and we know where they stashed all the loot and plunder that these two foreign and piratical organizations bled out of America and the rest of the world as well. As I have said many times, this is not about race or religion or even politics. This is about crime on a vast scale, exercised under color of law. Once our military and police and peacekeeping forces wake up, this will be dealt with. The liberation of America from the thrall of these undeclared foreign agents is already underway.
Links to Anna's articles and resources can be found in the video description box. Thank you for subscribing, liking and sharing.